Jazz Collective, I'd like to welcome you all to our National Youth Jazz Wednesday, our weekly stream where we speak to guests and colleagues and friends and alumni and students about the music that we're all making and the different projects that we're all leading. And I'm really thrilled today to be able to welcome two very, very dear friends from an organisation that we've been working with for the last 10 years now called Milapfest. And I'm going to invite them to tell you a bit more about the organisation. But first of all, please, everybody, will you welcome Kousic Sen on Tabla.
Nice to see you, Izzy.
Welcome, welcome. And then on sitar, very dear friend, Jonathan Meyer. Nice to see you, Jonathan.
Nice to see you as well, Izzy.
Welcome. We're going to be joined later on by another dear colleague and friend, Mick Foster. But for the moment, we're going to have a bit of a chat about the world of playing Indian music. And I was wondering, first of all, if we could start, Kousic, with telling us about how you came into playing music. What's your story? Because the students that we work with are always wondering, how did the tutors, what's their journey? So I know they'd love to hear, how did you first start to play music?
Very nice question. Yeah, actually, I had no other choice. My father used to tell me, you have to play tabla. And I started playing from my father's lab, basically. Started banging. And then slowly I went to different teachers, and I learned. But there was a rule that at 4 o'clock in the morning, I have to sit with my tabla. Whether it is winter or summer, no problem. The same time. And also in the evening, at least 1 hour when I was very small. So at that time, I used to think what kind of parents I have, they don't allow me to play outside. But later on, when I came into it, then it used to happen oppositely. That my father used to come around 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning that, okay, take this milk and go to sleep.
Wow.
So, yeah, at the same time, though my mother was a professional vocalist, but she was not that much interested to bring me in this profession. But it came automatically. I can't say that I intentionally came to this professional world or something like that. We had to compete. We had to go to many competitions in Bengal, in Calcutta, which was, and then from my teacher's side, it was another pressure that if you don't stand first, my door will be closed for you.
Wow.
So this kind of pressure from my teacher and from my father. So slowly, it came. I came into it, and then when I stood first in the world competition, which is one of the top competition, all India basis. And then people came to know my name. They started calling me, and then I came to UK first. Actually, my first tour was in UK in 1988. So this is the way I just came into this profession.
And I remember when we first started to talk about both of our sort of backgrounds, how we first got into music, that we were talking about the students that we had who were aged sort of 8 to 18. And I hadn't realized until we were having our conversation that it's quite unusual in the Indian culture for young people to be playing in public at a young age. And I wondered if you might say a bit more about that, the sort of, what is the ethos and the etiquette behind it?
Sure, because you're right that many people play or perform at young age. But unfortunately for me, until I was 25, and I mentioned you that when I stood first in the World competition, then my teacher allowed me to play outside. Before that, I was not allowed to play outside.
Wow.
Not a single performance except our own performance, which we used to do every year, once a year, only with my guru and his other students. Only I was allowed to play there, nothing else. So till 25 years of my age, I had to wait.
Wow. So Jonathan, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in London. And I came to music very early on. And just like Kousic Boy, I didn't have a choice. I mean, both my parents are musicians, and my grandfather was a musician as well. I was started on the violin and piano at the age of 5. I did some grades. I used to get extremely nervous for grades, so I got to about grade 3 or 4 on violin and piano at the age of must have been about 7 or 8 years old, and I said I never want to do the grades again, and they said that's fine, but I carried on playing, and I studied violin from my grandfather, and when he passed away when I was 12 years old, I said that's it, I don't want to have anything to do with music, because it was all around the house all the time. I was so a bit sick of it, really. So I said, that's it. I have nothing to do with music. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. And then I went crawling back to my mum and dad saying, I've just seen this keyboard. Can you buy me this keyboard? So I bought an old Yamaha DX27. And then I found my own route back into music. And I started writing. And I've always been around sitar. I've always been around Indian music because of my dad's work. So I think when I was about 15 or 16, I discovered one of my dad's old recordings called Dhammapada, which was from 1976. And it was extremely well recorded. And it had a sitar solo in it, a chap called Clem Alford, good sitarist, great sitarist. And I listened to that and I thought, yeah, I want to play that. That's what I want to do. And we had some family friends coming over from Kolkata. They picked me up a sitar, this one here, my first ever one, and then I just started from there. But and even then, you know, I didn't choose GCSE music. I didn't want to do music then, and somebody said, well, why don't you just sit the exams? I went along and sat the exam, and it's the highest grade I got out of everything else. I mean, I flopped maths and everything else. I was rubbish at that. And then I sort of fell into the path, and just like Kousic, it wasn't my intention to become a musician. But everything else I wanted to do, I had to cross them off because I couldn't get the grades for doing that. And I did well at A-level music. And then I just got a place in the Birmingham Conservatoire. And that's where I ramped up my study of composition with my dad and Andrew Downs, and learning the sitar. And then really after then, in 97, is when I started learning from my guru, who was Srivoto Roy Chowdhury. And I used to go to Berlin and Kolkata to see him.
Oh, okay. I was going to say to both of you, might you, because some of us don't really have a full understanding of the role of a guru, don't even know how you find a guru and what that relationship is. Might both of you explain a little bit about your individual gurus, and even if there's an ongoing relationship. So Kousic, might you first of all tell us who was your first guru?
My first guru is my father, obviously, but I really can't remember what did I learn from him. But at the age of 5, 6, I started going to my teacher, actually outside of my house. And he was also very good and learned and professional musician, a tabla player. He used to work for radio. His name was Manik Pal, Pandit Manik Pal. Mm-hmm. And then after a few years, I think I faced, because I was too little at that time, but communication-wise, that route was very tough to, bring me there or something like that. So then I went to Calcutta to learn, and with my parents, and then I started learning from Pandit Vishwanath Boseji. And after his sudden death, and then I started learning from Pandit Kumar Boseji. And at that time, he used to be very busy. We have practiced together. We have learned so many things. I have learned so many things. And then he used to actually play with Pandit Ravi Shankar ji at that time. Right. So he used to be away from India for more than 5-6 months a year. At that time, I also have learned from his brother, who is genius, Pandit Jayanta Boseji. So I have learned many things from him, and I do learn still now from everyone. Everyone.
The way that you described your relationship, it sounds like you went to live with them and that you practiced on a daily basis. Is that the case, or?
I never used to live. I never used to live with them, but most of the morning when he used to be here, so I had to go to his house. And also one more thing I can suggest to the students, actually, what I have experienced, that I used to go first and I used to leave last. So
Wow.
in between, it is not for 1 hour or 2 hours or something like that. It used to be more than 4 or 5 hours. But that experience I got, how he teaches to each and every person, every student, and sometimes I did not have time to get my class, but I used to learn so many things. And basically I can say that I used to steal so many things. So that is also a process of learning.
Brilliant. And Jonathan, what was your relationship with the guru?
And once again, my first guru would have been my father. But as far as sitar goes, for the Indian side, my first guru was Clem Alford, who I learned from. And he was a great bridge because he was a Westerner. And at that time, I had a very small understanding of Indian music. I was familiar with it because I was brought up listening to it. But he put it into a Western context for me, so I was able to get my head around it. And that was great. And then, so got through a lot of the grammar with him. Then I went to Ustad Wajahat Khan. Although he's a sarod player, he was teaching me sitar technique. And, he really did, hands down, help me with my technique. And that was very Western in the sense that you have a 1 hour lesson. You turn up, 1 hour lesson, thank you very much, there's the money. And I realized with Pandit Subhuto Chaudhary, who I studied more extensively with, is that it's more than that. And as Kousic Boy said, you'd stay for a lot longer. So when I went to Berlin, I'd go for the weekend. I would stay there, I'd cook, we'd chat, we'd play maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. And, it was more, we just listen to music together and talk about different rags. And it's all that absorption of, it's just more than just a lesson. And that's when it gets to that sort of stage of Guruji, they never really ask for money. It's more than that, so it's, right. You give an offering, but it becomes all immersive with the art and with your teacher. So, yeah. And it's really beautiful thing when you get close to your Guruji, and it's nice.
What does the word guru actually mean?
Well, it's a bit more than a teacher, isn't it? It's like a leader. It's almost, could look at it as a spiritual sort of leader. Mm-hmm. Do I believe in that? The spirituality of it? Probably a bit. But it's a person that you respect and really look up to. And I wanted to be that sponge and absorb as much information from him, and give what he's taught me, give it out to people.
What role does spirituality play for you, Kousic?
Yeah, just with Jonathan's voice, I want to mention that I have played with his guru a lot. I have made tour also with him. Such a nice person, and he used to be the professor of a college in Calcutta.
Ah.
So not 100%. He was not 100%, into sitar. Later on, he left his job and then he started taking it 100% for sitar. And I made his tour. Made tour with him. I played loads of concerts. We traveled together. Such a nice person. Yeah, I used to go to practice with him also in Calcutta in his house. So such a nice person. We recently lost him, I think a couple of years or something. Yeah. But he used to be a very nice person.
So about 6 years ago, we first started to work together. Sometimes we would be teaching together, and we actually got an octet together where we were playing music as well. And I was wondering whether we might, first of all, play. We've taken a very short video footage from one of the solos that you took at the last but one summer school when you've been working with the young musicians. And I wondered if we could, first of all, share that, and then whether you might actually tell us a bit about what you were doing during the week that led us to that.
I'm going to miss this year. Miss them this year.
Absolutely. So Nick, if you might play the video, that'd be fantastic. The short one, please. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So I know when we did the summer school, what we do to contextualize it is we invite you to go around each group, and you have a couple of sessions with each group. And I've sent a couple of the tunes that they're going to play in advance so that you can get to familiarize yourself. But then I just leave it to you, carte blanche. And it's always such an amazing outcome. And the youngsters are so excited because they feel that they don't really talk about rhythm, particularly, you know, the horn players. So to have that depth of conversation and doing all the things. So might you talk us about how you would engage in a piece like that with the young musicians, and what was it with them?
Sure. First of all of them are so nice and friendly, and they really want to learn. So I always enjoy with them, and they're so friendly as well. So, and then the teachers, of course, they are also so accommodative, and they want to go for the new concepts. This concept actually we call sawal jawab, like question answer. So this is typically North Indian classical concept. So, and I have set those pieces in that way that it matches with that real tune, the tara like that. So, and they really did it so quickly and so fast, and finally we could play it there together. That is the most enjoyable thing. Yeah.
The thing that amazes them the most is the subdivisions that the way that you divide the beat, and the way that you have to concentrate as a Western player very hard, because you could misunderstand the way that you change the accents and suddenly think that where one is moved, but actually it's the way that might you give us a bit of a demonstration about some of the sort of the patterning that you engage in when you're playing?
Yeah, that's why I have already mentioned them, that what Milap is doing, what NYJC is doing, that Milap is bringing youth, they are getting the flavor, they are learning the flavor of jazz, and you are taking me or other Indian musicians to there. So this is great job. I think in our childhood, we have not got this kind of, occasion or so this kind of thing, because in Calcutta, we hardly use to listen jazz music or something like that, and social network was not there at that time. So what you are doing that, though they are learning jazz music, but they are at the same time you are providing them to taste not only Indian music, also I know you bring other musicians from different genres also. So this is a great opportunity for them to have idea and gather and make their own music.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a great job by NYJC and Milap. I always say to the kids that not only North Indian and South Indian is also there, and jazz, and so other genres are coming and working together. They are learning in same place. That is, amazing thing, and they are performing also together. So this is an amazing, interesting thing, and these kids are really, really, really so lovable, and they are very good. You are doing great job.
Well, only because we work with you, my love, because it would be, imagine if we weren't kindred spirits, it would never work. But because everybody that we work with is so coming from the same sort of spiritual level, really, that we want basically to help all the young musicians be their true self, that it's really important to celebrate the individuality of all the musicians. And it's that individuality that when you bring those ingredients together, that makes the music feel authentic and honest and joyous, and it's what the audience would love to be part of. So I was wondering whether you might talk to us a bit about the tablas and do a small demonstration just to sort of explain how the instrument works and sort of some of the ways that you engage in your rhythmic playing.
Yeah, like also you have the same thing, same kind of divisions or something like that. The way of presentation is different.
Yeah,
that is the thing. But this time I was playing one piece. I forgot the name of that piece. I got it that it was 11, but then I asked that what is the division. So they say this is 5-6-6-5 and 6-5-5-6. So to maintain it continuously is very difficult. But we have the same thing, but we have a theka concept that it is fixed, that okay, 11 beats theka. So anybody you ask for in the world, any tabla player, they will play the same thing. Or we can make something new, that is another thing. But theka concept is there. So I am taking a very simple one like 16-4-4-4-4. But the thing is, when I am playing 1:1, then I am getting 16. When I am playing 2:1, that's in double speed, then I am getting 32. So within 16, how many divisions or how many patterns you can make, that you have to think. Like if you take 8 and 8, so it's very easy one that 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, or 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, or 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3, or 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5, like that. But the options are less because that number is, the small number. When you go to 16, you will get more choice. Then you can, though it is going 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, you can do 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4, or 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5, like that. Or 7 and 9. 7 means 3 4 and 4 and 5. 7 and 9 is also 16. So this kind of thing is always there. In every composition is there. Only you have to learn from the proper teacher so that you can know it from the beginning, that what you are playing. And what is the number behind it?
When we go to a concert, the audience really are following what's happening as well. And I've noticed a lot of them do a counting with the hand. Might you tell us about that? What is it that they're doing?
Yeah, this is a culture that many musicians, when we were students, we used to go, we always used to count, but not to show off or something like that. But we used to learn that, okay, oh, he's making this pattern. Oh, okay, he's making this tihai. So that's why people still, counts. But sometimes we have seen so many wrong counts is also there in front of you that you have to be careful.
Not to follow it. But when there
you have
are
to
certain
close your eyes and
cycles,
play.
when certain cycles go round and then the cycle's complete, the audience are often with that. And there's this great sense of shared coming back round to one again. Might you demonstrate that on the, might you demonstrate something?
Yes, that culture is there in India, that most of the places, especially who sits in the front, 2-3 rows, they understand the music, most of the cases. So though I am not telling that who are sitting back, they don't know the music, but most of the time they're musicians or young musicians or old musicians or like that, famous musicians are there. So because if you learn music, you will be with it, because our one is very important. That is actually not one, that is zero.
Oh yeah, forgotten about
that. That is zero. That zero is so important to come back in any cycle. So
might you actually, because if you get the viewers to be counting out loud to themselves while you play, and then maybe you could demonstrate, that would be really great.
Yeah, like if I take this speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Like that, because that you have to practice. That is double thinking. In every musicians, it is there in them. Because 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have to visualize where are you, or any cycle. So and then you start improvising on that. And nowadays you can get so many apps that you can get Lehra machine or Tabla machine, so many things. But in our childhood, we did not have anything. We had to count ourselves inside. And it works a lot actually, because when we go to accompany with someone, they come with their compositions, which I don't know. Like when Jonathan Bhai comes, okay, then at the stage, at the sound check, I ask, what is the tal you are going to play? Oh, the Rupak or Jhap tal or Teen tal, something like that. So immediately we have to go to take myself in that cycle. So that's why I think we all have to count ourselves and as a number. If you think about tal, that is different. But when you are thinking about the numbers, it's much more easier, according to my thought. I'm telling you.
Right. Well, Jonathan, we were just saying earlier on about how wonderful it is to bring the Indian musicians and the jazz musicians together, how they've never experienced each other's culture during the childhoods. And I'm thinking, I don't feel that's the case for you. I think you did. Am I right in thinking that you did feel both? Or might you tell us about the sort of the bicultureness?
Yeah, so I was brought up with listening to jazz, Indian music, and then Western classical as well. Because although my dad obviously did the Indo-Jazz, he also was a symphonic composer, so he wrote a lot of stuff for full orchestra and the solo raga music for solo clarinet back in the 50s. So yeah, I had a real different genres that I was listening to, and I've sort of taken out to myself to continue doing that and being that. I mean, I'm half Indian, So my father was born in Kolkata, and my mother was born in Wembley. So I'm that's what I am, and so it just feels natural for me for sitar, but also a lot of writing and collaboration work as well.
One of the things I noticed when we were working together was that I did feel that sometimes the way that you carried your body depended on which culture you were in. There were definite movements that you were playing on the sitar that you wouldn't be using if you were sitting at the piano. It was really very fluid. Oh. And might you tell us a bit about the sitar? And we had a wonderful development day where we all shared, and both yourself and Kousic shared a few insights into the music. And I wondered if you might do that now on this video talk.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So a quick guided tour. I think one of the main differences between Indian instruments and Western instruments is that Indian instruments are not designed for harmony. So where the way a guitar's tuned is designed so you could strum out the chord. Even the violin and the cello, they're tuned so to make arpeggios a lot easier. Whereas the sitar is designed for melodic line. There's no harmony, and literally at the moment, sorry for anyone who's got perfect pitch, because this is in between C sharp and D. It's not in equal tempo. So everything is tuned to that, the tonic, or sa, and sa is the most important note. So here's sa for me, and you can hear I've got it on the first string on the fret, second string, and my chikari strings, these top strings, I've got the fifth and then the tonic on there as well. So there's no getting away from that tonic. I've got the strings underneath, so there's 20 strings, between 18 and 20 strings on the sitar. Those strings are those strings are tuned to the rag that I'm going to play. This one, as tuned at the moment, is like a Lydian scale. And I don't know how good the sound quality is on Zoom, but if I play the string on top, so this is pa, which is the dominant, you might be able to hear the ringing of the strings underneath. So the whole thing is hollow, it's very light. So the idea of the sitar is to sparkle and sing. It's all about the melodic line. And also another interesting point about Indian music is that whereas Western music is always designed on harmony and arpeggio, so you go, as you can see, the sitar's not designed to do all of that jumping around, and so a lot of sitar melodies are just step by step. And a lot of Eastern music is like that. It's not based on the arpeggio. So just quickly on the rag or raga, this is it's almost like the musical modes that we improvise on. So there are hundreds of different rags. One of the first ones that you learn is called Rag Yaman, which is the Lydian scale with a sharpened fourth. So, but what we do with Rag Yaman is that we miss out the tonic on the way up, and sometimes a dominant on the way up. So it sounds, and you play them on the way down. Why? Because if you miss out the tonic and the dominant, it creates so much tension. That when you do eventually land on it, you come home, sort of thing. So it's about, it's sort of but that's one rag on those notes. So we've got, then we've got Maru Bahag, Kalyan. So they get all these different permutations, and each rag has got its own rasa. Rasa means mood. So each time you're playing, you're trying to create this special mood. And there's a way of creating a rag. So you've got to have a way of going up, ascending, and maybe a different way coming down. You've got to have a vadi and a samvadi. Basically, vadi means most important notes. Samvadi means second most important note. And I'll give you a quick example. So if I was going to play a rag with the sixth, or dha, as my most important note, I would improvise like this. It gives a lot of tension. But if I change that note to the leading note, or ni, it gives a much sweeter feel to it. And this is what I mean by rasa. So each rag has its unique feel, which you have to try and bring out.
And so would sa remain constant during the concert, and would the variety from piece to piece be changing the scale? And if you're changing the scale, do you then have to retune the sympathetic strings?
Yeah, so the sa never changes. So at the moment, as I said, I'm not on A440. I'm just in between. It's C sharp and D, and that doesn't matter because it depends. If I was playing, say I was playing with Kousic Sen, I'd say my sitar's in between C sharp and D. He would bring the size of tabla, and he's got a hammer there to hit the sitar player. No, so he's got this hammer. He's able to tune to my pitch. Obviously, if I'm collaborating with other musicians, then I'll take it up to D. But then in an Indian classical concert setting, that sa would never change. And I would, if I was playing the rag, so say if I was playing that one rag, I would play it for maybe 45 minutes. So you're constantly improvising on this mode for 45 minutes. So, you know, sometimes I guess for a jazz musician, you know, if you're given a solo, 5 minutes maybe, you know, if you're part of a band, but we've got to really stretch it out. But that's where there's a lot of grammar behind it. There's certain rules and a path you have to go down when you play.
And that's what's been really lovely about working with you both, is that we've had the opportunity to spend several days, you know, over the last 8 years where we've worked together and started to share things like the scales and the different terminology that we've got, but finding what our common ground is, but then also how different the use of those scales is. And I'd like to welcome to the conversation a dear colleague who was part of the octet situation, Mick Foster. Hello, Mick.
Hi there.
Hi, nice to see you.
Hi everyone.
Just to contextualise things, we had an octet which Kousic and Mick and myself were in, with 4 jazz musicians and 4 Indian musicians, and we generated our own music, and then we toured and played, and we also worked with each other's young musicians, and that's where the foundation of this friendship and relationship has evolved and grown. And I can remember one development day when we were looking at scales, and we discovered that we had lots of common ground in the actual structure of the modes, but I remember you being very fascinated about what you actually do, and I wondered if you might remind us of some of the questions that you asked while we were doing that and some of the observations that you made.
Yeah, so I think we were interested in what was similar. So Jonathan was just explaining about a sound there that was similar to the Lydian mode. And then we have our own names for these things. So a lot of the time we were comparing, weren't we, what we would call something and what the different Indian names, and the different names depending on what kind of Indian music, whether it was Northern Indian or Southern Indian music, those correlations and those sounds had. So I think that was really interesting for us. What was also interesting is, again, as Jonathan was just touching on there, was that the way those modes are treated in the different traditions or different sounds. So you might go up one way, you might come down another way. Obviously we have more freedom when we're using those sounds. So it was actually quite difficult for us to emulate that, but it was very useful to try to do it. So to give a sound, a different sort of sound. But it's interesting because you're saying you miss notes out on the way up and play them on the way down. That's quite similar actually to some techniques that we do if we decide to miss a note out of a mode to make a cell or to make a particular sound. Those sort of things are quite in common. So it's just interesting to hear some similarities there.
I can remember when we realised that the Dorian mode, we had that in common. Jonathan, can you remember what's the Dorian mode? What's the term of the scale for the What would you call it?
You put me on the spot now. Wait a sec. Dorian, yeah?
Yeah.
Rag Coffee.
And we did a free improvisation where we all used that, and then I started to put a sharp 11 in, and then suddenly all the Indian musicians stopped and looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm playing Dorian, but I've just added a bit of colour." And I remember that really fascinated you, Mick, because maybe you might want to pick up on the story, because you decided that you would like to actually be quite strict for a while and to not add in any of the chromatic coloration.
Yeah, absolutely. We were trying to sort of go with what with the sound that we were working with, but then your idea to no, well, we can just do this. And you know, some of the Indian musicians were saying, well, you know, you can't just do that. And we said, well, we can actually just do that because it's the sound. Of course you can. But it was just interesting, wasn't it, with that tension, I suppose, with what you can and you can't do. Again, it's rules of Western. It's like when you're working with Western music, people talk about rules, don't they? But what do those rules mean? They're just guidelines. If you do something one way, it'll sound like something. That's how we were working. But no, it was interesting, wasn't it? Just to see, it was quite funny, really. So I mean, I was interested into sort of seeing if I could stick with those sort of guidelines or those rules, really.
And I think the other thing that we found fascinating was when we were talking to Kousic about rhythm, and we might talk about something that was in 5/8/3/4, 5/8/2/4, and you'd see it as a whole. There was one groove where you said, "Oh, it's 21," and all our eyes rolled around in our heads, going, "I can't count 21." They're used to that subdivision, but you felt it was much more natural to see it in a cyclical way. And I know I work with Mark Mondesi a lot, and I know when he plays drums, he prefers to see, you know, a mixture of time signatures as a whole, so that he's got that sense of cycle all the time. When we played some of the compositions that we brought together, I remembered that we would mark out sections of the solos to make it clear to people that we were moving on into either to another section of the piece or into someone else's solo. And there was this lovely technique where you brought in a 3 of something that happened 3 times. I wondered if you might share that, because what we were really keen to do was to make everything feel very natural, and if there was any communication between ourselves, it was always musical, so there was no conducting ever. And you came up with this lovely idea, which is an integral part of what you all do on a regular basis. I'm sure you and Jonathan do it naturally whenever you play duets. Might you share that sort of cyclical idea?
Yeah, it's called actually Tihai. And Tihai has different characteristics. So simple Tihai with where you can breathe, we call it damdar, that you can breathe, there is a breathing time. Vedam, there is much lesser breathing time. And then Ati Vedam is like there is no breathing time. So if you calculate the math, is very easy, is not that difficult. What interesting and the most important thing is you should know exact, pulse to go with. Otherwise, you will be in the wrong place. So, like if you take, I also discussed it in the workshop in the summer school. Like if you want to divide 16 equally by 3. Mathematically, it is not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we are coming to 17. Even 17, you can't divide equally into 3 parts. But musically, it is possible. Just like if you take the cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay? Then starting from 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So
yeah,
it came. But this is Vedam. There is much lesser space for the breathing. But if you take 11, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. There is a space for breathing.
And that when you got to 3, for us, it felt like it would be the end of the bar, but actually it was actually back on the first beat.
0, yeah, back on the 0 or 1, whatever you say, back to the beginning point of the cycle.
So if Kousic was doing that voluntarily, Jonathan, would you suddenly spot that was happening? Is it something that's become a very natural sort of ebb and flow between a duo, or would it be something that you talk about in advance so it's sort of choreographed a bit?
No. No, we don't talk about it beforehand. It's funny the way the performance works. If it's a duo, say it's sitar and tabla. So the sitar generally takes the lead just because we got the alap section, that's the opening section without any sense of rhythm. Maybe jaw section where I introduce a pulse, and jala, which is a fast repetitive pattern. All of that could be done without the tabla. And then the tabla player comes in. And generally when he starts, I would just hold down a gut or a composition on, say, 16 beats. And over the top, Kousic would improvise. And in there, he would use those T-highs. And then it would be my turn. But it's not like a question and answer thing. So when I improvise, it might be slightly longer. When he improvises, he might take a longer solo. But it's the journey within it. So it's not like, oh, I have a go, Kousic has a go. You can sort of feel it. You see a point when, and sometimes what I would do is when I'm playing, I'm thinking, do you know what? I don't really know what I'm going to do next. So do you know what? I'm just going to hand it over to Kousic and play. And he plays something. I think, yes, maybe that brings you off, and he takes you somewhere else. So that's a lovely thing on stage to happen.
And when we were talking earlier on, Mick, you wanted to remind us of the difference between the two, the sort of cultural divide. Might you ask that question that we were talking about earlier on?
Sorry,
about the northern.
Oh yeah, we were talking about the role of improvisation and the extent of improvisation in the music actually, and how that varies from northern Indian music and southern Indian music. And perhaps you could just talk us a little bit through that, about those sort of broad differences.
So Jonathan, by first.
Yeah, I'll do it. I think generally speaking, you can look at South Indian music as ensemble music. You would have a situation where you could have Veena, Violin together with a singer, and they will say, okay, we're going to do Ragam Hanswardhani, for argument's sake, which is the name of the rag. And there's almost like a set composition that they go through. I don't know, there's Pallavi, there's a few different things, and they can actually play as an ensemble, whereas North Indian music is definitely soloistic. Everyone's a soloist, basically. And so that, by definition, is going to give the performer a lot of more chance to improvise a lot more. And it's not that they don't improvise in South India. It's just there's more improvisation, upaj, in North India as opposed to South India. So North Indian soloistic and South Indian an ensemble music.
So with this fantastic, I always think of when we're composing and arranging, I think of it very much like we're chefs. We've got different ingredients that we're using, and palettes and colour and stuff. And when you are writing yourself for your own projects, what's your sonic sound world? Is it a fusion of all of them? Do you ever lean one way more and then another, or how has it now shaped you as a musician, this bicultural music making?
You mean?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, do you know, I approach things for different, depending on the project. So my last big work I wrote was my second sitar concerto, and I wanted to make a point that I'm writing it in a Western idiom. So my second movement in that is pretty atonal, which I've taken the sitar out of his sound world, but then I've interjected spaces where a sitarist would feel comfortable. So from that, I'm looking at it very much from a Western point of view. But hopefully going to get a new commission writing a series of works for solo Western instruments, and it'd be raga music for solo Western instruments. And that way I'd approach it very much from an Indian point of view, and I wanted to get into a position where I'd write out the full rag performance for a Western musician. So they'll be able to go on stage and play with a tabla player and get through it, you know, with as much phrasing. It's not going to be completely, totally Indian, because there is that a bit of phrasing, but you know, I can notate it as close as possible. And then also, obviously, the rhythmical section, that could be straight notated as such. So so I've got this hat, you know, an Indian hat and a Western hat, and I just changed them.
And we grew up around that in the 70s when we were listening to music. There was so much cross-pollination going on, like you said, with your father, Joe Harriott, and the Anglo-Indian project. There's also the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Shakti, and you know, even lots of Indian pop musicians coming to the fore. And there's like a chain of 4 times removed between yourself and Mick, because your father played with Joe Harriott played with Michael Garrick, and Michael Garrick was a big mentor of Mick's, and one of the first sort of big bands that you played with professionally. Did you ever hear any of this in Michael's writing, Mick?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Michael was influenced by all sorts of things. I mean, he was, of course, at the heart of all his composition was Duke Ellington, and especially with the big band writing. But the sounds of free jazz that he got from Joe Harriott. I mean, before Joe Harriott was working with Indo-Jazz fusions, he was developing his own brand really of free jazz. You know, having come from Jamaica as well. So he's got all sorts of sounds in his music, you know, playing bebop, free jazz, and then he got involved with Jonathan's father and with the Indo-Jazz fusions, and all these different sounds. I think Mike used to manage to get into his compositions, and some of his compositions would be on a theme, maybe on a drone or on a particular style. That he'd got from another source or another culture. Definitely, that was quite obvious, I think.
And the other way around, Kousic, by now being such an integral part of the UK and Europe and playing with all sorts of different musicians, wondering how much that's influenced your playing, and if it's a different Kousic that we hear now than when you first moved from Calcutta.
Yeah, actually, when I used to stay in Calcutta, I actually have played more Western musicians or other genres, you know, in the different parts of the world, because I used to tour. So, like I used to play with the Persian musicians for a long time. They live in Germany, and most of them, and few used to come from, you know, Iran, and then with Balinese music, you know, music from Bali. So, and then many musicians from different genres I have worked with. But yeah, but always in my own way to understand. So, and I am just answering the previous question Mika just asked about this improvisation. We have few things that we have to learn at the beginning of, you know, life, that we call it qaida. Like qaida means bunch of actually phrases. Like pick some phrase like dha tere kete dhati, dha tere kete tak, tak tere kete tak. And the other thing is we have to speak out the same thing and the same speed. So within that, without bringing any other syllables, what can you do? You are fixed. That is dha tere kete dhati, dha tere kete tak, tak tere kete tak. So there is dha tere kete dhati. These 3 things are there. So how much patterns you can make, including the tihai. You should not bring anything from outside. So dha tere kete dhati, dha tere kete tak, 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 So it goes on. Then you can take dhati in the front, like that. So this kind of improvisations we had to learn at the beginning of our life. And then I was lucky my teacher was not that strict that you whatever you are learning, you have to play the exactly same thing. He always used to give us freedom, make on your own. Make on your own and show me. I will check it. But you have to learn how to make.
Yeah.
That I also do to my students, that it is not that what I am giving you, you have to pay the same thing. You make on your own.
Right. So with that, we're going to bring this evening to a close. First of all, I'd just like to ask each of you, when somebody says, what do you do? What's your profession? What do you say? Kousic, what's your answer?
I'm a student. I was a student. I will be a student of music.
Nice. Jonathan?
I can't beat that. That's brilliant. I'd just say musician. Yeah.
Yeah. Mick?
Yeah, I would say musician, woodwind player, and composer.
Brilliant. Well, all of you are amazing musicians to work with, and I'm very much looking forward to when we come back together again physically, spiritually. We've never left one another, and talking about this has just really cheered me up. I feel like we're all in the room together. Latency is the nuisance. Like I was sitting here nodding, thinking, "Oh, Coach is going to think I can't do one again." Time delay. So, we're going to actually finish this session with playing a video of when you were at the summer school. The little extract we played earlier on. We're going to play out with the whole video. I just want to say to everybody that's watching, thank you so much for watching and supporting us. We've actually just launched a fantastic brand new website. So if you'd like to go and have a look at that and see the work we're doing, we've got lots of moments on those pages that feature all of the tutors that we've been talking to today, as well as the wonderful young musicians who we miss terribly, and we can't wait to see them all again. But if you would like to support our work, as you can imagine, we're very keen to make sure that our work is available to everybody, irrespective of what their financial background. And so we do have a really healthy policy for bursaries. And obviously in this day and age, as you can imagine, it's difficult keeping that coffer full and making sure all the young musicians can access it. So if you'd like to make a donation, that there is a link on this Facebook page. Next week, I'm going to be talking to Tina Lyle and Mark Hodgson. Both of them very prolific jazz musicians and composers, but also a lot of crossover, different types of crossovers. So that's going to be really interesting talking to them as well. Everyone next week will be teaching on the summer school as well. And Kousic, I will be in touch because we would very much like to, and Jonathan, involve you in some way over the summer school. And Mick, we've been having a bit of a chat as well. So that's the beauty of being online. Actually, we can bring the group together. And so very much looking forward to that. Everybody sign up for the newsletter because you'll be able to hear about what we've got planned. We're sending a newsletter out in the second week of July, which is telling all our plans, and you can all be part of that. So in the meantime, I'd like to thank from the bottom of my heart 3 very dear friends. Kousic Sen.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jonathan Mayer.
So much. Thank you.
And Mick Foster.
Thank you, Izzy. Thank you.
Nice to see you. So, Nick, thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you.